people need to understand, I mean, you and I have been to the Middle East. I mean, this radical Islamists who just hate anything to do with our way of life, they would eliminate us in a heartbeat. And so we have to make the case to the American people that this is justified. That's not been done. And until it's done, this is going to be Vietnam all over again, shipmate. There's going to be bodies coming back. There's going to be protests at our air bases. I mean, we're going to see the military actually, I believe, diminish in the estimation of the American public. I mean, you've opened Pandora's box. And the only way to get out of it now is to appeal to the American people that this is a commitment that this country needs to make, because it's going to cost lives.
You've got this rescue operation, SEAL Team 6 and the other special forces. That's kind of what they do. But then to see the CIA disinformation campaign going on the ground to lead the Iranians initially to believe that we had the guy is a pretty big deal.
Well, it absolutely is. And okay, I have to be careful what I say about this. Let's just say that, sometimes when you hear those stories about, all of the terrorist leaders were together at one place and then the U.S. just happened to know exactly where that was. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if, say, hypothetically, that text messages or some kind of communications had been sent to those terrorists to make it look like someone of their friends or one of their allies was saying, hey, you should all come visit here tonight. We have a big meeting. And perhaps it was actually somebody else sending them those messages at the same time. I'm just saying that there are capabilities out there.
All right, guys, it is Tuesday and it is already not a boring week. Congress isn't even in session. The war in Iran is pretty much going up to, I don't know that I'd say a 10, but it's 8 or 9 right now. The president making it very clear that he wants to see some action. Amazing, heroic rescue that they briefed on yesterday at the White House. The former Secretary of the Navy, Admiral, Ambassador, my former boss, Ken Braithwaite, joins us in just a second. And then Jack Posobiec, a former Navy intel guy, he's going to give us his take on that, plus the MAHA movement and a couple other things, UFOs maybe, if we have time. We've got so much to break down with the two of them. Before I get to that, though, and we've got a great week ahead for you, and I've got a special surprise coming up. You're not going to believe what happened to an interview that we did. I'm going to tell you more about that tomorrow. It is unbelievable. It's caused some big issues. And I'm going to break it down for you tomorrow because you're not going to believe what happened when a guest appeared on this show. Major issues. That's a huge tease for tomorrow's show. But before I get into that, I got to tell you something. You know what came in the mail yesterday? Trump 2.0, ladies and gentlemen. It is here. It is done. It is ready. I am so proud of this book. I will hope that you will go on Amazon right now and order Trump 2.0. You can see this red part down here, Forward by Donald J. Trump, 47th President of the United States. He opens the book with the foreword talking about why this term is different. If you or anyone you know, I was literally talking to somebody this on Easter Sunday. He said, why Trump 2.0 is so different than 1.0. And I looked at him and I said, you got to go buy my book if you really want to understand this, because I just finished this analysis of it. I'm so proud of this book. Normally it has my face on the back of the book. This one's got President Trump as it is on the front. He said to me the other day in the Oval Office, he goes, that's a really nice cover. I said, because it's you, Mr. President. So there you go. Anyway, a big show coming your way. Former Secretary of the Navy, Ken Braithwaite, will be here. And then Jack Posobiec, former Navy intel guy, to give us his take as well. Before I bring the two of them in, though, I got to tell you, you guys know this. If I am traveling, I'm bringing my beam, because my Beam Stream Powder has been part of my wellness journey, because everything is built off of whether or not you get a good night's sleep. And Beam Stream Powder, and you know this, I do play favorites. I do love the brownie batter. This is no question about it. Great. But that cocoa cinnamon, if this is your thing, I don't know. Not everyone's a cocoa cinnamon thing, which is why all the flavors are great. But that cocoa cinnamon, I could eat it, drink it all day long, but I won't, because it's got 5 all natural flavors in it: reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, magnesium. 30 minutes after I take it, I just take 1 scoop, put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. I know some people like milk, some people don't like the microwave, whatever, personal preference. Bottom line is 30 minutes later, my head hits the pillow. I'm out like a light. I wake up feeling refreshed, ready to go. It is so great. And if you've been waiting for the right time to try Beam's Dream Powder, this is it. They are offering all listeners and watchers of the Sean Spicer Show an exclusive discount. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 40% off. This will not last. This will not last. This is like their spring jump into spring deal. This is the best discount that Beam has ever given out. So if you're looking for an opportunity to do it, this is it. Go to beam.com/Spicer, use code Spicer, and you can grab 40% off. Try any of the flavors, do it all, but do it when you get that first order. Shopbeam.com/Spicer. And if you're taking care of yourself, you know who else you should take care of? Man's best friend. That's why I love Rough Greens. It is a supplement for your dog. Dr. Dennis Black, he's a naturopathic doctor, started thinking, we do all this great stuff for ourselves. We take all these supplements to make ourselves healthier. Why not do the same for man's best friend? For your dog, it supports long-term health by providing live, bioavailable nutrients, essential vitamins, minerals, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and omega oils. I love this stuff. It is literally all the stuff that we take, but for our dog, you see a change immediately. My dog lapped this stuff up. I take one little scoop, put it on top of her dinner. My dog eats twice a day. Probably your dog does too. I only do it once a day. They'll sprinkle a little on top. They eat it all up. And I'm telling you, it's amazing how quick you'll see it in their skin, their coat, their activity. It's awesome. So don't change your dog's food. That's the best part. All this is just like we do. It's a supplement. Just add the Rough Greens, and they're offering a free Jumpstart bag right now. You get all sorts of cool stuff in the Jumpstart bag. You just cover the shipping for this. Go to Rough Greens, RUFF greens.com, roughgreens.com, and use promo code Spicer for the free Jumpstart bag. All you do is cover shipping. Don't change your dog's food. Just add Rough Greens, roughgreens.com, promo code Spicer. All right, without further ado, I want to welcome in the former Secretary of the Navy, Admiral, Ambassador, and Commanding Officer to yours truly, Ken Braithwaite. Mr. Secretary, good to see you again. Look, the Israelis are already starting to make good on the president's threat to bomb some of these railways and key infrastructure sites. What do you think this means for the current situation in Iran?
Well, more importantly, what does it mean for us in the United States, Sean? I mean, we've committed ourselves to an engagement, and we've pressed this hard, but we haven't gone over the bar to engage what we need to do if we want to eliminate this theocracy. I mean, as you and I have discussed this many times, this is the greatest threat to the Western world, is this theocratic government in Tehran. They need to be eliminated. And, to get there, we're going to have to put boots on the ground. Continuing air campaigns, continuing to do what we're doing is only going to get us so far. I mean, they're entrenched. And let's just be honest, they're like cockroaches. I mean, they're crawling under every bit of slab of concrete they can find. They're burying all their resiliency, so they're luring us in. So the president has to make a decision whether or not he wants to go to that level. And the big question there, Sean, is whether or not the United States of America has been convinced that this is a war in which we need to be engaged. As you and I have discussed, again, we need to be there. We need to eliminate these guys. We need to change the dynamics in the Middle East. For all of America to understand that Tehran has been exporting terrorism around the world. They supported their evil enemy, the Taliban, in supplying them all kinds of IEDs that if you've ever seen a disfigured veteran of our military, a wounded warrior who has lost a limb, you can thank the theocrats in Tehran. You can thank Khomeini and his herd of thugs.
And thank them because they've paid for it, they built it, or just sponsored it.
All of it, Sean. Right? All those IEDs, the Taliban didn't have the capability. I mean, you and I were in Afghanistan. I mean, they did not have the ability to create those type of weapons within the confines of Afghanistan. So, Iran was very happy to export, all the technology that they've been developing over years into Afghanistan to help the Taliban, defeat the United States of America. And whether we like it or not, we left Afghanistan with our tail between our legs.
Right. And so the president, everybody got in a tizzy today because the president sent out this truth that said a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, we have complete and total regime change. where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds will prevail. I took that not as a message to America, but as a message to Iran, to their leadership, saying we can continue to prosecute this. But here's my question for you, both as a diplomat and as a naval strategist. Does that message resonate with them?
No. That's what. So again, I've explained this in many engagements, but you got a 20-60-20 mentality. 20% of the population of Iran are committed to this regime and supporting them in power. 60% of the people, or you got 20% on the other side, who are completely opposed and would rebel in a heartbeat if they could. They tried back in January. The 60% in the middle, Sean, are the ones who have no dog in this fight. They just want to get up every day, go to work, provide for their families, and go back and sleep in a peaceful environment. And you know what? The theocrats in Tehran, that's just chaff to them. There's no commitment to their people. I don't know if you saw on Sunday, but they did this big rally, patriotic rally, and they were handing out free flags, to every Iranian that would take one, understanding that the only way they can retain power is to convince the government that the evil Americans are coming over the hill. And so you need to stand ready to defend, your country against them. And the sad thing is a lot of those people have been convinced that this is the case. I mean, you're a communicator. You understand the importance of crafting the message, spinning the message, propaganda of the message. These guys in Tehran are masters at that, right? I mean, they have convinced the people in Iran that this is all the West. This is the evil Israelis who have brought their buddies, the Americans, along, who have been their archenemy for 47 years. This is not going to, the president's rhetoric, right? It's you got to be a little cautious here, because what's going to happen is it's the fox and the grapes. As simple as that. Let's go back to Aesop's fables, right? If you continue to say something and you don't back it up with action, right, then pretty soon everybody's going to be like, okay, it's a veiled threat that really this isn't going to materialize. So the president is now committing the United States to, it's going to be bigger than shock and awe. This is going to be, a commitment of the United States to go in there and replace this regime. And you and I agree, Sean, this is the only way you change the dynamic in present day Iran.
So there's a lot of reports that Iran's new supreme leader, another Khomeini, is unconscious.
More radical, Sean, more radical and more committed, to this religious fervor and all of the terrorism that comes from that, whether it's supporting the Houthis, supporting Hamas or Hezbollah, all those proxies. These guys are digging down and they're doubling down.
So does it matter that these reports say that he's unable to be involved in any decision making because the next guy in line is equally nuts? Or is there a belief that somehow further down this chain of command, somebody's going to be the voice of reason?
I don't think anybody's the voice of reason. Yeah. I mean, the Israelis can continue to take out leader after leader after leader. But remember, those that are in power, even down to field grade officers, are the ones who are, given the spoils and the riches. They have access to things that the rest of the population doesn't have. They live a much more comfortable life, and they're committed, to these theocrats. So, has the C2 been damaged? Absolutely. You and I both know that, right? I mean, an Iranian leader has to be very careful popping his head up and making any decision right now. But the way that they have managed around that is to decentralize. And if they're committed in stopping America and Israel from invading their shores, it's going to be a sporty battle, my friend. And there will be Americans lost in that. I mean, think about the calculus behind, getting our Air Force pilot out of there before he ended up being the next Jeff Zahn, right? Displayed across the television sets of the world as, look what we got. Now, I think the Iranians would have overplayed their cards doing that, because then that would have created fervor within the United States, right, for the support of the war. But that's what this came down to, right? The importance of what people perceive. America's not been convinced yet, Sean. The president's not done the communications endeavor to convince the American public that we need to be there. However, and I'll say this 100 times, this is the greatest threat to our freedom. My daughter recently went up to New York to see a play, and I asked her, my daughter's pretty liberal, Sean, believe it or not, college student. And, she was telling me how excited she was to go up there. I said, Grace, let me ask you a question. Do you feel safe when you're in New York? She goes, well, yes, Dad, I do. I said, why do you feel safe? She goes, well, it's here in America. We're not living overseas anymore. I said, you feel safe in America, Grace, because we've created a secure environment, right? I said, but remember we talked about the war in Iran and the potential to export terrorism that's supported by these theocrats. If that would have occurred, they would have been able to achieve any kind of nuclear capability. It's the one thing that drove me back into government back in 2016, right? I gave up a great private sector career after retiring from the Navy. The commitment here to affect us, to change our life, there isn't any greater threat to America. If they possess nuclear weapons, you can bet you they're going to use them.
So is it fair to say that at this point, we've done as much as we can on the air campaign? And if we really want to finish the job, it's going to require boots on the ground?
You can ask Bob Harwood, you can ask H.R. McMaster, you can ask any of the leading military strategists of the day. Regime change is going to take boots on ground.
So the big other issue that the president's been railing on, that obviously is affecting oil prices and everything else right now, is
I told you gas price at the pump going to go up $1, didn't I?
And there you go. You were right. So now tell me how to get them back down.
Higher. They're going up higher, Sean.
Okay, so now do the reverse of the trick. Tell me how to get them down, because I think we all get it. The president wants it open. He's tried to play the diplomatic route and get the Europeans involved. What is it? I know you're already shaking your head. Like, what is it going to take then? Because I don't see how they negotiate. Everyone says we're going to negotiate with the Iranians as if this is like a business deal. What is it going to take? Does it mean that we have to reinforce the banks of the strait with boots on the ground and other artillery? Like, what is it going to take to actually get the Strait of Hormuz open and safe for passage?
Yeah, so you have to understand culture, Sean. I will bang on this. You remember when you were a young lieutenant, not that long ago, because you're a young captain now.
Yeah.
But, back when you were a young lieutenant, I used to tell you guys all the time, culture rules everything. The culture of the smallest enterprise, right? The culture in your family, the culture in a nation. And what we're underestimating is the cultural commitment, of this regime in Tehran. And that's what it's going to take. There's no negotiating here. I mean, they actually, in some instances, have the upper hand, because the more they push, the more they convince us to put boots on the ground. That's what they're hoping for, Sean. They want us to put boots on the ground because they want to see the television cameras capture, American soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen coming back in transfer cases to Dover Air Force Base right down the road here from my house. That's literally, what Tehran wants out of this. And so they're baiting us. To open the straits, we got to take the straits. The way to take the straits is to take the Iranian side of the channel. It's about 23 miles across, but there's only 2 miles of usable space. That's the channel that all the ship traffic moves through. I mean, that's a pretty easy space to defend if you want to shut it down, which is why this inept, half-capable military has been able to affect, the world economy as they have. It comes down to geography. And geography is important here. So to make sure that we can move our ships through that strait, we have got to hold the land, and we've got to be able to prevent them from launching anything into that strait, right? We can knock down their Shaheeds. We have the ability. You and I both know that. The CIWS system on our ships is second to none, right? Any incoming slow-moving drone's going to get knocked out of the sky. But when you're focused on that, you got to worry about the asymmetrical threat of unmanned surface craft that's moving into that space. And the biggest threat, the thing that's taken out more of our ships in the Persian Gulf, Mark 1, Mod 0, old World War I era mines, right? I mean, we went into Iraq back in 2003. We went up the river with our command up into Qasar, and all these mines were laying up on the seawall, ready to be deployed by the Iraqis, because they know the power of those things. So you got to clear all that. You got to maintain command and control of the banks so that they're not able to launch anything. We've decimated their navy, so they can't launch any of those mines by seaborne assets. And then again, we just have to make sure that we have complete control of the skies to be able to knock down any of the drones. Then we open the straits.
Okay, give me some context. What does opening the straits mean, though? Is it 10,000 Marines lining the shores? Is it 20,000, 50,000? I mean, like, what is it going to take to do that manpower and artillery wise, et cetera?
I'm going to give you the answer that I would give anybody. It's going to take what it takes there, shipmate. I literally, I mean, I'm a naval officer. And so, I know gunfire support and being able to put our Marines ashore. But it's going to take thousands of Marines. I mean, it's a pretty long strait to get through. And you've got to control that space on the land side. Can we do it? Absolutely, we can do it. I've said this. I said this on your show the last time I was on, and I've repeated this. We absolutely can open those straits. But it's going to take a commitment on America that I'm not sure that the average American out here on the streets in Philadelphia or Detroit or Los Angeles is going to be willing to support.
But
that
see, this
case
has
not been made.
Right, but okay, there's the case, the messaging, and I get that, what you're saying on this. You got to go out there and explain why it's critical to do this. But it seems like we are at an impasse, which is you either walk away, and the Iranians, in my opinion, will make you still pay the price for it regardless. Like if we walked out there today, they're not going to go, all right, guys, all good, we're good, and then, like that's it. Like they're going to exact revenge. They're even more pissed off.
Hey, Sean, they've already said that. They said,
right,
from now on, any passage, right? We're setting up a toll booth and we're going to collect money because you, after bombing our infrastructure, you're going to pay for rebuilding it. So you're absolutely
not
right.
only that, I think it's beyond the strait. They're going to come for our homeland too. My point, though, is that now you don't. In my opinion, there is no choice but to finish the job.
Fair, but you got to convince America that, Sean. Or you know what? Every president who's been in the Oval Office, when they've not convinced the American public of committing troops to engage, and that's happened a lot in our recent history, right? I mean, we can just start ticking off all of the military actions that we've embarked upon, that we've not gone through the process to convince the American people, right, that this is the war we need to be in. I am, as you know, this is the reason why I got back into government, right? Was because the Obama administration signed the JCPOA. I mean, it was the stupidest agreement in modern history of the United States that we signed on to something that would give these, theocratic thugs the ability to get nuclear weapons. They were on a path because that's the only way they have parity in the Middle East with Israel, their avowed enemy, right? Or they can actually negotiate with us if they have nuclear weapons from a much different position. And would they use those? My fear is they would, because they're driven, by this radical religious belief. You can't negotiate with people like that. So yes, I agree with you that we need to take out the regime, but we've got to make the case to the American people of what the threat is. We've not done that.
So let me just give you my perspective and tell me if I'm wrong, because as I said, right now, pulling out gets you nothing. In fact, probably you have a heightened sense of security afterwards in terms of both.
Worse than that, you've emboldened the Iranians and proven that they actually were able to hold out and,
right.
They can stand up against the number one power of the world. Absolutely.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, no offense, but I mean, you're pregnant now from a war standpoint. You got to keep going. You cannot say I changed my mind. Okay. So then we say we're going to reinforce the shores. We're going to make sure that we take out any capabilities to fire, short range missiles at our ships, to launch any kind of one-off drones, etc. But then don't you, beyond that, the 20% that you talked about at the beginning, like that to me is like, even if you fortify the shores, you still have another mission, which is that you've got to make sure that, or you stay there forever. I mean, that's the conundrum. Either you get a regime in place that is going to be, willing to deal with you, or you stay there forever. I don't see it. To me, this is 3 steps. You got to message the American people. You got to take the shores, and then you actually have to change the regime.
I don't disagree with you, my dear friend. Right, but that's a tall order.
Yes.
And an expensive.
But what other options? I guess my point is, I'm missing. I just don't think I'm missing a piece here, because my point is, I don't think there is another option. I don't think that they're ever going to come to the table,
Sean,
and I don't think you can walk away.
We're discussing something that's not even debatable. You're
right.
absolutely right. But this is the problem. This is democracy. And in a democracy, it's the people's will, right? And the president can't operate in a vacuum deciding we're going to do X, Y, Z without having the American public support him. And he's not convinced us of that yet, right? I mean, there's all the crap in the, all the chatter in the news about oil prices. We haven't come back to the core issue, and that is the nuclear capability of Iran, right? I mean, that's what the threat to security in the Western world is all about. And the only way that you eliminate that is to go in. That argument has not been made. The president, in my estimation, and I'm not the president of the United States, so we defer to the man in the White House, but he's got to make the case. And it's not a political issue, Sean. People need to understand, you and I have been to the Middle East. I mean, this radical Islamists who just hate anything to do with our way of life, they would eliminate us in a heartbeat. And so we have to make the case to the American people that this is justified. That's not been done. And until it's done, this is going to be Vietnam all over again, shipmate. There's going to be bodies coming back. There's going to be protests at our air bases. We're going to see the military actually, I believe, diminish in the estimation of the American public. You've opened Pandora's box. And the only way to get out of it now is to appeal to the American people that this is a commitment that this country needs to make, because it's going to cost lives.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to ask you one last question, but I want to do it in a different way that I think a lot of people
make it a nice question now.
It is. It's going to be a nice question. All of my questions are nice. You're beyond a naval officer and an admiral and everything. You got your start as an aviator. So this is what I thought was interesting. For the longest time, we were told initially all of their air assets were taken out. When this F-15E got shot down, I was amazed personally that they had the capability to do that.
Don't be. They've bunkered down. They've retained weapons that can take our aircraft out. Hell, if the Viet Cong in North Vietnam could bring down American fighter aircraft, the best the 20th century could produce, with rifle, the Iranians are going to get lucky, and in this case, a shoulder-mounted weapon, and you just happen to, line it up just right. It's going to happen again. You never completely command the sky. The Iranians can't put anything up in the air that we can't knock out. So from that aspect, the president is correct. We have complete control of the skies and the seas over and around Iran. The problem is every once in a while, they're going to get a lucky shot. And one of our aircraft are going to come down. The slower our aircraft are, we start putting helicopters in, they're going to be under even greater risk.
Yeah, I agree. That's the scary part. Mr. Secretary, Ambassador, Admiral, thank you once again for being with us and providing some straight talk, because I think that's what we need right now, and I appreciate it, and I will do my best, as you have been doing, to make sure that we get that message out as to what the real threat is.
You always do, Sean. That's why I'm so proud of you. You've done a great job, and keep up the good work. Help educate the American public on the importance of this engagement.
Will do. Thanks, sir.
All right. Take care.
What a great conversation with Ken. I've got to thank him. That is analysis that we're not hearing anywhere else. Now I want to bring in my buddy, the host of Human Events, the amazing guy that's got his pulse on the finger of MAGA, plus a former naval intel officer, Jack Posobiec. Jack, good to see you. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today. I want to start, your background is obviously in intel. I want to play you a few seconds of what the CIA director said yesterday at the White House about this and get you to react.
At the President's direction, we deployed both human assets and exquisite technologies that no other intelligence service in the world possesses to a daunting challenge, comparable to hunting for a single grain of sand in the middle of a desert. This was also a race against the clock, as it was critical that we locate the downed aviator as quickly as possible, while at the same time keeping our enemies misdirected.
All right, Jack, I've never in my 27 years in the Navy heard a CIA director publicly brief about the coordination that exists on a mission like this. Have you?
This is from soup to nuts. This is a high degree of briefing, a high degree of transparency on an operation like this, you typically just don't get something like a CIA director or anyone really from the intelligence community coming out and confirming even the existence of the coordination itself. Typically, you'd reach out to the CIA and they would say no comment. And, you might get a couple of lines in like a Washington Post article that says, we believe, according to reports, that there was some CIA assistance, but that's it. That's pretty much all you would normally get. But the fact that they have the technical capabilities that they do, the fact that they were able to use that level of sophistication, and that they're actually publicly coming forward on it. Look, I mean, it's pretty clear the president wanted to take a victory lap here. He has every right to, because of the massive W that this was for U.S. forces and for the U.S. government. And it's just something where, politically speaking, I've said from the start that, I know a lot of people had, a lot of skepticism going into this, but as victories do line up, that is something that the public tends to get behind.
I guess the bigger issue to me is I thought the capability was amazing. The idea that you've got this rescue operation, SEAL Team 6 and the other special forces, that's kind of what they do. But then to see the CIA disinformation campaign going on the ground to lead the Iranians initially to believe that we had the guy is a pretty big deal.
Well, it absolutely is. And, okay, I have to be careful what I say about this. Let's just say that, sometimes when you hear those stories about, all of the terrorist leaders were together at one place and then the U.S. just happened to know exactly where that was. Well, wouldn't it be interesting if, say, hypothetically, that text messages or some kind of communications had been sent to those terrorists to make it look like someone of their friends or one of their allies was saying, hey, you should all come visit here tonight. We have a big meeting. And perhaps it was actually somebody else sending them those messages at the same time. I'm just saying that there are capabilities out there.
Wow. I just was taken back by the level of sophistication, coordination. But here's the thing. We just had the former Secretary of the Navy on, Ken Braithwaite, and former Navy Admiral, my boss when I was a lieutenant. And he was like, look, in order to finish the job, we're going to have, if we really want to take the Strait, it's going to require, troop reinforcements on the banks. And his bigger and broader point is that at some point, like, you're going to see more. The Iranians are going to get lucky another couple times. They're going to take somebody out. They're going to hit a plane. It's like we have to be right 100% of the time. They only have to be lucky once. Do you think we're conditioned at this point yet to deal with that as a country?
Well, that's a great question. And, I think that, look, you compare this to Iraq and Afghanistan, as people have tried to bring up, and that's just, it feels like a generation ago in many ways. And if you're someone in Gen Z who's looking at this, I think that it comes across very differently than someone who has gone through the Iraq and Afghanistan experiences, as our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth himself, has served in, and so many other members of the cabinet, so many other members of the administration, or vice president as well, in fact. And so as a country, I think that people haven't gotten conditioned to the idea of just saying Americans dying, but at the same time, conflict, I would say, in that region, U.S. conflict in that region is becoming more and more normalized, to the point where I think the initial shock has kind of worn off at this point, and people know that, okay, well, it may not necessarily be popular. Well, neither is the regime, neither are the gas prices aren't going to be popular, and people are looking for a way for it to wind down. But a lot of these things have started to begun to be priced in.
Yeah, but I think that, with all due respect to the administration, they've made a very strong case about oil and what we're doing. But I agree with Secretary Braithwaite's analysis here, which is Iran poses an existential threat to our well-being. They want to kill us. If they could develop a nuclear weapon sooner rather than later, I do think they would use it. They'll use any methods and means to go after us in Israel. I feel like that message isn't getting through as much to the country, to say, guys, this isn't about controlling straits or oil or whatever. It is about making sure that terrorism stays over there and not here.
Well, I think that's exactly correct, as a matter of fact. And it's something where, a lot of people pointed out that And I remembered going into the State of the Union. So a couple weeks ago, and people remember, if you lined it up, the State of the Union was essentially the same week that this operation began, Operation Epic Fury. And I had expected to hear more from the president in the State of the Union because as the buzz in Washington, D.C. goes, a lot of us had seen, of course, the troop buildup, the equipment buildup. On the Navy side, we saw what was going on, 2 aircraft carriers. And so I had expected more of that speech to be used from a communications perspective to outline that threat and to bring it up. And to be sure, it was, but it was percentage-wise, pound for pound, it was a sliver of the speech compared to some of the amazing moments that we got with multiple medals of honor. You had everyone from Irina Zarutska's parents to, of course, the great Erica Kirk, who was there. Charlie's widow was there. And so you didn't have one of those specific moments really about Iran, something that could tie it home for people regarding the threat that exists there. And I think that is something that has been, and certainly communications better than anyone, that the administration, I would say, push more on that because we're hearing about the Strait. People are hearing about the gas prices. Say, okay, gas is up because of the Strait, but the why needs to be intertwined with all of that. And someone who's been good on this is actually a vice president. Every time he speaks, he brings it up: nuclear, 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 nuclear. As the president likes to say, it's the N word of geopolitics.
So you mentioned Afghanistan and Iraq. There's a lot of people, particularly in the MAGA world, and frankly, even the president of the United States, who campaigned on no forever wars. How do we strike that balance before you've seen some fissures? Tucker Carlson was brutal last night on the president. What do we need to do to make the case, to explain to people that this is not a forever war? This is not Afghanistan. This is not Iraq.
Well, I've said throughout that, look, you can't compare it to Afghanistan or Iraq just because it's apples to oranges at this point. We haven't seen the massive troop buildup. So I was very careful what I said earlier. I said equipment buildup, which we did see, but we didn't see those massive troop numbers going over. And I'm not talking about the amount of troops of a C-130 or a couple of C-130s. I'm talking about that sea lift required mobility to have all of these, hundreds of thousands of troops like we saw in those previous situations. That's what's going on there. Plus, you also haven't really heard the president, and I certainly haven't heard him say anything about this, about the idea of nation building. And that's really what took so much time in places like Iraq or Afghanistan, where in Afghanistan, of course, we turned the thing back over to the Taliban. President hasn't said anything about that. He said, if the people want to rise up, let them rise up. That hasn't happened. And he's also said, let's work with the new regime. He's talked about the fact that there is a de facto regime change that's taken place because the earlier leaders have been wiped out. And so the idea that you're going to compare that to something where we spend a decade plus in each instance with, again, thousands upon thousands of troops on the ground in a ground invasion force where we deliberately were engaged in nation building, democracy building, trying to build up another military. It's just a completely separate situation. Those were forever wars. This is a military operation. Okay.
As I mentioned at the outset, you're an intel guy. You've also got your pulse on the finger of MAGA. I said this to Secretary Braithwaite I stole a lot of his intel to make the assessment, so I'll be fair about this, but I don't see how you can win this operation. They're never going to come to the table. Iran is never going to negotiate like some European country would for a peaceful settlement. I just don't see it. In order to stop them and open up the strait, as the president has declared, you have to have ground troops to some degree to take the shoreline, because that's where they're firing from. That's where they're launching drones. So either I want you to tell me that I'm wrong in my assessment, or that you agree, because I don't see how we get to a point where we do win or are successful, however you want to define that, opening the strait, et cetera, without putting those ground troops that you're talking about, at least tens of thousands of them, in that, on that Iranian side of the strait.
Well, sure. If you're looking from a military perspective, there'd be no way to be able to take out the coastal defense cruise missiles without actually physically going onto the mainland itself. Of course, that's going to be very tough to take. And anyone could look up the Gallipoli campaign. And the last time that a Western military force tried to take a strait, that was the Dardanelles in World War I. And as Churchill found out, it did not go so well, because you're in that very confined operating environment with high cliff face, and then you're backed up against water, where you don't have a great ability of resupply. But I guess I would also say that from the geopolitical standpoint, where's President Trump going to be heading in just a couple of weeks' time? About a little over a month here, I think he's scheduled to go to Beijing. And he's scheduled to sit down with Chinese leadership, Xi Jinping. And I think China is a huge player in this. I think the administration's been working with China in many ways, or at least communicating with them behind the scenes, and in a lot of facets where if you look at it one-on-one, U.S.-Iran or U.S.-Israel-Iran, you're right. I don't think the Iranians come in. But with the role of the Chinese coming in more and more on play, and the fact that they've been backstopping a lot of these efforts with the interlocutors in Islamabad and Pakistan, I think that the Chinese have a huge role to play here that isn't being talked about. And the fact of the matter is that Iran needs China more than they need anyone right now, because that's their lifeline to the world. That's their lifeline for economic support. So if the Chinese say jump, they're going to say how high.
So that's the non boots on the ground option, is to get China to buy into this.
Or, yeah, exactly. I think if China
recognize their own economic interests,
they want they want that oil flowing, and they need that oil flowing.
All right, I want to pivot because it's got a few minutes left with you, and obviously I saw you and your family attended the Easter egg roll yesterday at the White House. But I thought it was cool that it was cool. But I thought what was neat is that your wife was posting the MAHA aspects of it, like that they were putting out fresh fruit and all this, and not just chocolate and candy. I'm sure some of the kids were disappointed, but probably some of the parents were excited.
Actually, it's funny because you're exactly describing the situation within my family yesterday as we're going around, because the little AJ is going, he goes, "Mommy, where's the candy?" Mommy, and she goes, "Here's an apple. Here's, a carrot. Here's some fresh oranges." And he goes, But mommy, we're looking around all around. Where's the candy? You said Easter eggs. He's thinking candy. What's the basket of candy? And meanwhile, of course, but then, as it goes, he gets hungry enough. He goes for the orange. He goes for the apple. And my wife, coming from Eastern Europe like she does, she absolutely loved it. The idea of the embrace of whole food, natural food, that's just, to her, that's normal. And being an immigrant to the U.S., from a country that doesn't have, the mass processed foods like we do, it was a breath of fresh air. That being said, though, I got to be fair, because President Trump was giving out at the very end those boxes of the Trump White House M&Ms and a couple of Hershey bars with the presidential seal on them. So they did get some at the very end.
He can't help himself. But I will say that this is why I want to ask you, because you went down the perfect trail that I was hoping to. Your wife found it appealing. And that's what I think we need to, as we head into the midterms, target women like that say this MAHA movement is exactly what I need. And I'm glad that I don't think that we're messaging that enough. The ultra processed food, the red dyes, the microplastics, the getting back to healthy food, the reversal of the food pyramid. But the reaction that your wife had is what I think the reaction of a lot of women have had. We're not messaging, I think, the real winning things. You see these stories now about no tax on tip, as we're in tax season, becoming a huge win for people. Like the MAHA thing, the no tax on tips, like we're not messaging the big wins that I think we should be.
Oh, I think it's true, but also at the same time, when these things do happen, perhaps this event could be seen as a pivot in terms of that as well, because I actually had to leave the egg roll a little bit early, had my own show to do in the afternoon, Human Events. And so she was posting those videos and I hadn't even seen them yet. I go to social media to check her feed out. I say, see if she posted anything. Those things are doing gangbusters online.
Right.
They're hyper viral. They've gone all over. People couldn't, because they had the American flag, but it was made with fresh fruit and vegetables and a couple other, I think it was like a map that was made out of fresh fruits and vegetables and different things. And people were saying, oh my gosh, it's a MAHA Easter egg roll. And yet, to your point about messaging, we didn't know that going into it. We hadn't been told that, there's going to be this big MAHA push on it. We weren't expecting to see it. But the minute that people found out about this on social media, it took off like wildfire. And you're absolutely right. I've said this over and over and over, and I'll stick to it, that the MAHA movement, all right, is actually bigger than the MAGA movement. And that's nothing against the MAGA movement. MAGA movement is massive. However, What the MAHA movement does is that it goes into places that the MAGA movement doesn't go to.
Yes.
It goes to those suburban women. It goes to those moms. It goes to those places for the normie families that, aren't interested in politics. They're not looking at Karg Island and the, which Ayatollah is. They're not focused on that stuff, or, who's running in this primary or whatever. No, but you know what they are looking at? Looking at groceries. They're looking at their kids. They care about health. It's so huge online, health and wellness. MAHA is the direct input on this. And I see these influencers, I see these shows out there, the podcasts, they're enormous. That's why I try to go as much as I can to different MAHA events and work with those guys over at, MAHA Action and some of the other groups, because I think this is a constituency that can become, if you can just activate a certain percentage of those in the midterms, particularly in the key states where we've got Senate races that are targeted. Maine, perfect example of a place where, you got all those crunchy granola moms up there, right? That's a perfect place where a MAHA push could keep Susan Collins where, and I'm just going to say it, where we need her. She's the best Republican we're going to get up there. We absolutely need to make sure that seat stays on lock. And then you can spend more money in other places like, I don't know, next door in New Hampshire, or maybe down in North Carolina. It's at Georgia, which is ripe for the picking, since we're going on the MAHA, the fruits and veggies pick, right? That's a seat that should be flipped, is Georgia, right? Get some fresh oranges out of there while we're at it, and peaches.
I agree. I mean, that's my point is, I think you're right, because the MAGA movement's always going to stick with Trump, and it's been time tested. But these MAHA moms in particular, they got brought in. They are a new coalition. Mm-hmm. They have the reaction that your wife had, which is, wow, my son or daughter will eat these, healthy things if that's what's offered to them. And we need to get that, as opposed to all the crappy ultra processed stuff that they're normally just offered. There's another big issue that kind of blew up in the last few days that I want your take on. I think Tim Burchett of Tennessee was the first one. Then Anna Paulina Luna has been very vocal on this. This idea of, what does our government know about UFOs? And for the longest time, it was confined to like conspiracy theories and Area 51. There is now growing evidence, it seems, that we are aware of some life out there, and Congress is demanding answers. Do you think we will get it?
I'll just say that if will we get it? Maybe. I'll say this, Sean. I used to be like the biggest UFO guy. I thought it was the coolest thing. I love that. I'm a huge sci-fi guy, and I believed it so much until the government started telling me about it. And then, just because the government has been so had such a loss of credibility over the last couple of years, I'm like, I just don't buy the government stuff. I don't buy the government disclosures. Do I think that we've seen, things that we can't explain? Yes. However, I'm much more on the train that these are probably drone technologies from near peer countries that have unfortunately been able to get through our defenses. You look at things that what Ukraine Operation Spiderweb is able to do in the backfield in Russia. I kind of tend to lean more in that direction.
Well, here's why my skepticism is. We have a big world, and I don't think that aliens just come to the United States. And so I think if there was actual extraterrestrial life, I think whether it's India or China or Russia or France, or Greece, if I were an alien, I'd go to some Greek island and chill
someplace
there.
a little nicer.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to Delaware, no offense. And so I think that's my skepticism. Anyway, Jack, thanks for sharing your time with us. I love what you guys are doing at Human Events. Keep pumping it out. Keep asking the right questions. I love what you guys did there at the White House, keeping people honest. And anyway, as always, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us.
Appreciate it, Sean. God bless to you and everybody.
You bet. All right, guys, thanks for being with us. We got a great week lined up. We're going to cover this from every angle, what the president's doing, what the fallout is. Again, I'm so excited that Trump 2.0 is finally out. Go order Trump 2.0 on Amazon. And maybe I'll send you, if you're a watcher of the show and you send me a note, I'll send you a personalized little book plate to put inside. If that's what you want, just go to contact@SeanSpicer.com. If you go to Amazon right now and order Trump 2.0, thanks for being here. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Trump 2.0 on the Sean Spicer Show. You can go to SeanSpicer.com for my latest column, though. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.